It's episode 34 of the Improv London podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Moses, and a big thanks goes out to Steve Rowe of Hoopla for describing me as the Improv John Craven, which is very much a nickname I'm hoping will catch on and that I will live up to. This week's guest is Mike Hutcherson.
Are you going to be heard from there?
Yes.
Where's the microphone? Is it on the top?
It's actually there.
Okay. Omnidirectional.
Yeah. And strangely, there's never any problem with me being heard.
Really?
On this podcast.
You've got such gravitas.
Yes, I'm here.
It's like Morgan Freeman.
Yes. Well, that's a very nice comparison. I will take that. Yes, very much the Morgan Freeman that I'm going for.
Yeah?
Yes.
Going to narrate some penguins.
Yes.
When I first met Andy Dufresne, he was just a tall drink of water. The worst Morgan Freeman impression anyone's ever done. I'm known for my bad impressions.
Are you?
Yeah. Lewis, who you've interviewed, has notes that I did Keanu Reeves, and he's like, it's great because your Keanu Reeves sounds like Nick Cage, and your Nick Cage sounds like Keanu Reeves, and you don't put them in the same ballpark.
No.
You don't think that they sound like the same voice.
No.
But they're both airy. Like there's a lot of air in their voice. Keanu's more like a hippie kind of, oh, really? I know Kung Fu. And Nick Cage is just a hair more intense, but the same voice. Oh my God! And I didn't realise I was generally trying to do separate impressions. And Lewis pointed out the Venn diagram of my bad impressions. And hey, Nick Cage and Keanu Reeves, who'd have thought? Done badly, same voice.
There's a little tip for all the listeners out there wanting to perfect their
Oh, we're putting this on the podcast?
I think we should put that on the podcast.
That's fine.
I think we should put that. I think that's a nice little tip.
This is the intro to me is a bad Morgan Freeman. And that's fine. I can live with that.
Well, yes, we should do the official welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, Mike Hutcherson. Welcome to the Improv London podcast.
Woo! Hey, I'm a long-time listener.
Oh, thank you very much.
First-time interviewee.
Yes.
Interviewee. You've interviewed many of my chums.
Brilliant. Well, I'm happy to add you to the list of chums.
List of chums.
List of chums.
The chum list.
The chum list. It's a good list to be on.
What an honour. I love being on the chum list. It's like one word as well, chum list. It sounds like an occupation. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a chum list.
I think it's more of a vocation rather than... I don't think this pays.
Very true.
Lots of things to talk about.
Okay. Improv, I guess, is probably one.
We should perhaps focus in on that a little bit.
Just a bit.
Otherwise, we really are going to be here for quite a long time.
I was going to talk about Chechnya.
Yeah. Let's talk about glitch.
Okay, sure.
Glitch is a thing.
Let's start at the end. Let's do it.
Yeah. Glitch is a thing.
Yeah.
That's like two really good things.
Mm-hmm.
Puppets and improv.
Mm-hmm.
And but you've just thought, well, maybe I should combine the two and make a doubly good thing.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal. It's funny you said two, because I always think of it as free. Because, I mean, absolutely, people see glitch, like the improvised puppet show, and they hear puppetry, improv. But, my thing when creating it was always Bunraku puppetry, tabletop puppetry, and improv, but the narrative is a huge, huge part of what glitch is and what I wanted to do with it. I'm a huge narrative nerd, and even before making it puppets, I wanted to do an improv group that was long-form narrative because I'd studied comparative mythology and screenwriting and brought those into improv, and I was like, I think I know how to do narrative improv. And I saw a lot of other groups doing narrative improv. I don't want to say wrong, but wrong. No, that's terrible. But do you know what I mean? I was coming at it not from an improv standpoint, but from screenwriting and comparative mythology, and I was seeing, I kind of developed some tools I thought if we did things like this, this, and this, like that would, and help a well-told story. And also the two things kind of slam up against each other, improv and narrative, and that's why it's so easy to kind of mess it up. Certainly, maybe a less experienced improviser will be doing a narrative show and think the important thing is information, and you often hear, like way too much information in a narrative show. We've got to go over here. We're going to cross the bridge and get the key to the king, and then release the dragon, and then we were going to ride the dragon. It's like, dude, let's just walk over to the bridge, and maybe we'll meet someone there, and then we'll see what happens. Do you know what I mean? But certainly, like, that was like what I wanted to bring to narrative improv was kind of simplicity and going one step at a time, but at the same time having a very basic kind of structure there that we're trying to tell compelling, interesting stories that are character-driven, not information-driven.
And you got that from studying comparative mythology?
Yeah. So, do you know... No. Oh, you're shrugging your shoulders in confusion. So, there's lots of great books and writings on comparative mythology, but the kind of Bible, the Del Close of comparative mythology is this guy Joseph Campbell.
Right.
He wrote a book called Hero with a Thousand Faces. He was written a bunch of books on the concept, and he kind of made the point that we was looking at all the different religions and histories of all these of cultures from around the world to a time when they weren't able to communicate with each other or know what everyone else was doing. We now are able to look back through all these cultures' histories and see what they were doing. And Campbell made the recognition that all these cultures, not oblivious of what everyone else was doing, whether it's Russian folklore or, Chinese folklore or European fairy tales, Aboriginal stories, like all these different cultures, they were all telling the same story, right? They were all doing like 20 beats in their stories that were identical. And it was based on the audience. It wasn't based on the writers all having the same idea. They would tell the story and the audience would like these bits and not like these other bits. And eventually they would all develop and change their stories. And the story that they all developed, Campbell called it the monomyth or the hero's journey, were all incredibly similar, universally. And that's fascinating. That to me blew my mind when I came across that. And I wasn't even studying improv when I found that. I was really kind of digging deep into narrative. I was interested in mythology and I was studying screenwriting because I want to make movies. And I loved that. I loved that idea that that these stories came from audience reaction, and every audience around the world wants the same things from their stories. They want a protagonist. They want to follow one definitive character, not get messy with multiple characters. They want a good story. They want that character to have a change in their situation, a change that is potentially bigger than them. They want their ordinary life to not be great, but be normal, and then the change to change their world entirely. They don't want it to go well all the time, They want bad things to happen. They want to meet allies, and and if you look at everything from, like, when I teach this, I always, like, bring up Pixar movies, because I think they're the best thing, but you could literally do this with any well-told story, a fairy tale or an action movie. It's always the same story. And that's kind of what the concept of comparative mythology is.
Cool. So you had that interest and that kind of narrative interest.
Yeah.
So you encountered improv before the puppets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I encountered the style of puppetry I'm doing with Glitch afterwards, but I was doing puppetry when I was a kid, like really young. My parents told a story about, I think I was destroyed bath sponges just to make puppets. You just like put a slit halfway through the sponge and all of a sudden you got a mouth.
Oh, yeah.
Draw with a felt tip, eyes on, put a t-shirt on your arm and you're done. That's a puppet. Right?
Really?
And that literally, I think I was like 8 or like 7 or 8 when I first did that. And I was like, like made a puppet.
Yeah.
It looked like shit. It was a sponge with eyes drawn on it.
Yeah.
But literally take that, and from then to now, and like I was like, well, if I could learn to sew, I could make these better. And that interest kind of in my teens kind of got me interested in what theatre was going on with puppetry, and I started discovering what was going on. It was about that time that I found the community of theatre, like children's theatre, that were touring with children's shows that were with puppetry. And in my late teens, I ended up, after college, went on tour with a number of these companies. And yeah, I'd already, by college, I'd discovered improv, but improv has been a floaty thing in my life. Like, it stopped for the puppetry, or it stopped for me to live abroad for a bit, and it's come back constantly. But yeah, I found the puppetry first. I think because of the movie The Labyrinth.
Oh, I love Labyrinth. And Labyrinth is one of those films that I only saw quite recently.
Right.
And there are so many films that people love because they saw them at a really formative age. But I saw it quite recently, and I still thought it was amazing.
It blew my tiny mind as a child. It blew my tiny... And I was like... I'm too young to have seen it in the cinema or anything, but my older brothers and sisters did go to the cinema to see it, and they were all raving about it, whatever. Eventually, it was in my house on VHS, and the story and the ideas and the imagination, I think I decided there and then that I want to not necessarily do puppetry, but I wanted to make stuff, you know, whether it's film or theatre or anything really. But yeah, definitely the puppetry started there.
And so how did you discover improv?
Two separate entities at the exact same time. I was studying theatre at college. I'm from Devon. I'm from Torquay, middle of nowhere. You can't really, you can study anything in London, right? Here there weren't a lot of creative options. I had no interest in being an actor ever, but I studied theatre performance, basically, like an actor would. I had no interest in doing that, but it was the closest thing to doing something creative I could do. And as part of that course, it was a BTEC National Diploma in Performing Arts, which I don't think exists anymore.
I don't think it does, no.
No. This is way back. We're in the 90s. Yeah, so as a part of that, they do improv, but taught to you by a teacher who doesn't know or give a shit about improv, right?
It's the best way to learn.
Yeah, but I imagine that is happening around the world. Like, it's on the syllabus, it has to be taught, and they just don't know how to teach it because they're not experiencing it. But teachers have to teach everything, so you can't expect them to nail everything. I'm sure that they all just want to do Shakespeare. And then they're like, I'm going to do this weird shitty thing where they make shit up. I don't want to do that. I want to do Brecht. Yeah, so Keith Johnson's book, the first one, Improv, was taught as part of the syllabus. And at the same time, I was going to puppet theatre festivals, and I came up here to London and watched Improbable Theatre. Do you know Improbable?
No.
It's kind of an adult group that do more contemporary stuff with theatre and everything. And I saw a show called 70 Hill Lane. And in Improbable Theatre is Lee Simpson, who's one of the Comedy Store players. So he often brings improv elements into the show. And this was a more devised piece that they were doing. And it was actually based on Phelan McDermott, who's another member of the company. It's based on in his childhood. And they were doing puppetry with newspaper and sellotape, and they would build the puppets in front of your eyes.
Wow.
Like, they would literally just pull out sellotape and make a big mess, and they would mold the shape of a human and start manipulating it, and it would walk. And in some cases, and the same with newspaper, they would just start screwing up newspaper on a table and just shape it into a character, and just their manipulation of the characters was just... And it again blew my mind once more, and I just thought, I love puppetry at this point, and... it was amazing, but I went to see that show twice. They had a puppeteer called Steve Tiplady, who I've since met, is wonderful, in the company, but there was a show that he couldn't make, and Lee Simpson, who directed it, I believe, took over his role for one night, but he didn't know the show. but they're all improvisers. And Fanny McDermott's an improviser, and who else was in that show? Guy Darnett, and these are amazing people. But I saw it first I saw the perfect, developed, more planned version first. I saw it like a bit later on, like 6 or 10 months later at a festival, and Lee was just improvising, and it was right about the time I was studying it at school and I was at college, and it was great to watch Lee Simpson, this amazing improviser, get through the show that I'd already seen using improv, but more than anything, I enjoyed the rest of the cast dancing around him, and like trying to push it in the right direction and understand it. And it was just, it was brought up. We knew it was improv, and it was just wonderful to watch. And that made me fall in love with it. And then straight after that, I got on their mailing list, and they did a weekend course, basically. And that was my first improv course, and it was with Lee Simpson, who's one of the Comedy Store players. And also there was Neil Ashdown, who's been on Whose Lines It Anyway. So this is my first improv training, was with people like that. And it was just a weekend course. It was just like 3 days. It was a long weekend, 2 days. It was 3 days. And I fell in love with improv, and I realized what it was, because in school, my teacher, who just wants to teach us Shakespeare, doesn't know what it is, Never said, like, yes and is a thing.
Really?
This is like, spontaneity, and then you do, like, he's literally, like, half reading Keith Johnson's book, and like, I get it. Not even that, they read one chapter on it, and that's the chapter we looked at. So, once I had that course, once I'd done that weekend, I came back to my college and formed a group. I just formed a group with like 3 funny friends of mine.
Yeah.
And at my college, we had these things called, we had this Wednesday at 1 was a big thing. The theatre is available to anyone who wants to use it, Wednesday at 1 to put on a show.
Wow.
1 o'clock being lunchtime, right? So you can get an audience.
Yeah,
people come and eat their sandwiches.
Yeah.
And people would book it long in advance if they were like, it was a performing arts college. There was, dancers and actors wanted to practice their pieces, and people would put on shows, but not every week. If there was a gap, we put on an improv show, because and we would advertise it that day. We'd call up whoever's in charge of booking and be like, has anyone booked the space?
Yeah.
Has anyone put on a show this Wednesday?
Yeah.
We'd be like, oh no, the dance troupe we're going to, but someone's fall out, so we're not doing it. We would that day just spread word we're doing an improv show at lunchtime at 1 o'clock. And we would do an improv show at 1 o'clock and have an audience.
Wow.
We did that over 2 years, and we eventually got a nice following.
Yeah.
A really just within the college, within the walls of our space. Yeah. But people would be like, oh, the group's called Jam Jar. Jam Jar are playing this Wednesday, and we would just come on. And we didn't do it often, and we didn't even have it regularly. We'd go months without doing one, and then we'd just start messing with it. Then we got experimental. Then we were plugging in the camera into a projector, and we did a whole show with the projector and a camera and we were just experimenting with different things.
So that's kind of where you. Where did you? What did you start doing, and then?
Well, we started just doing improv. The first thing we did was improv narrative out of nowhere, just because one of the 4 of us, my friend Derek, played piano. We're like, oh, let's do musicals. We just didn't know better.
That's a beautiful place to be, because you don't know what the limits are. So
now I'm so scared of improv musicals, because I know that it's an art form. Yeah. I'm in a group with people who are brilliant at it. I often perform on stage with Lewis and Connor Jatta and Charlie Dinkin, who can just on the spot just start singing a song and make it up. And I think that's a skill. It's a separate set of skill almost that you can learn and get better at. And I sing in Glitch all the time. I just don't have that magic little thing where you just can pull a rhyme out, and build the structure. I know that's something you can learn and get better at, but I also think you have to be like a music nerd. You go to Connor's house, and it's not surprising that there's just records.
Yeah.
I'm a movie nerd, so I'm good at narrative, I guess. But certainly, and Lewis just knows every musical in the world. So you've got to have that in your soul first, I think. Although I'm sure musical improv teachers like, I guess, Katie Shute and Heather and all that lot would say no, you can learn it.
Yeah.
But we just did, first 3 we did were just musicals, because Derek played piano. And he would just do something really simple, and we'd just make noises or sing the most basic song, and we didn't care about rhyming. So the first couple we did were musicals. Then we did some more short-formy stuff. Then we did some stuff that was half-developed. And then we just got nuts. Then we were just like, let's just all wear like white painters suits. And
dungarees?
Yeah, like, the painters kind of zip up. Like onesies, like with the hoods up.
Oh, yeah.
And just do really, like, what we called, like, weird improv. Like, which is just, like, we wouldn't do scenes or characters would just make noises or just, like, do silent scenes. And we didn't know that was a thing at that point. Because at that point, all I had done was this one weekend with Improv Ball. And it wasn't until, like, years later I moved up to London and studied with other people and did Crunchy Frog. And I did Imprology, which is Remy Bernard's group. That I was like, oh, there's more. Yeah.
So with Glitch, you're very sort of, it's narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So you start the show. What do you ask the audience for at the beginning?
Yeah. So we've gone through different phases asking different things, but we've fallen in this thing that I really like, where we get a suggestion from the audience of character's first name, and then we get their second name, and I make sure if they give us an ordinary first name, I make sure it's a weird second name.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if they go John, I'm like, let's give John a second name that the character would normally have, and then they say something like Toaster. I'm like, brilliant. The hero of our story is John Toaster. And then we try and get a and the title.
Right.
So John Toaster and the. So like the Harry Potter or Indiana Jones or Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Chamber of Secrets. There's always like some cool like location or object or character in those kind of titles.
Yes.
So across, quite quickly across the whole audience, we've got interesting, fun character name. That doesn't really matter, that doesn't inform the character too much, although sometimes it can. It certainly informs gender most of the time. And then we get, but it's the and the something that is a fun way of doing. And I've never seen anyone do that before. We just we did a bunch of shows in a row where we ended up having a and the title, so-and-so and the. And we just kind of stuck, and I really like it. I think it's fun. It gives each show we've done a really cool title, And somewhere I've got a log of them.
Yeah.
I try to keep a log of them, then I'll forget for like 6 months, and then I'll send out an email going, hey, anyone seen us in the last 6 months? Do you remember what the show was called?
I love that. I'm very interested in improvisers and what notes or what records they take of the shows that they've done. I find that really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it interesting too. I've kind of totally slacked on that. At the beginning, I was really keeping track of it, but I think I haven't filled that in like 10 months. And I will have to backtrack. Thankfully, sometimes I'll tag the title in with a photo, so I think I'll work it out. I think we'll work it out. Yeah, so that's our we get the title, basically, the title of the show. And so we get the thing, and we try and grab whatever the interesting thing is in that title, and put it in our back pocket and not use it immediately.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas, and me and Lewis would just talk about this yesterday, Music Box would say, so if the title was, and the Angry Prison, right? They will do their opening number in a prison, right? Which is how musicals work, because it's a piece of theatre. Like, the history of musicals is often centred in a few locations. Whereas what we're doing is often more questy and epic. We can go anywhere. We're not confined. We're not trying to be confined to that location. We actually actively try to go on an adventure and see different things and meet different characters and give our protagonists problems to solve and situations to get around. So we try to start somewhere that is completely different. Sometimes using one of the unused suggestions from the audience as well, which is fun. But yeah, so if they said prison, we're starting our show on the North Pole. or or just in a suburban house in the middle of nowhere, or in the middle of a cornfield. We're just going to be like, we'll get to the prison. Like, Charlie Martin is in the group, was saying last night that she's sure that the audience think we fucked up. Like, oh, we didn't say cornfield. We said prison. Why are they? What are they doing? They've messed up. They've forgotten the title already.
Which does happen in improv shows, to be fair.
I'm the worst. I'm the worst. And the good thing about Glitch is, like, because we're operating puppets, like, and we're really tight, close to each other, this is the worst thing, and no one should ever do this. I'm not in the scene, but I'm operating someone's feet.
Yeah.
Like, and then someone else is operating another puppet's feet next to me, but people above us are actually operating the main puppet.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll just, like, lean in and be like, what's the title of the show? What is it? Like, we just have a great... Or I'll do that to, like, Fraser, our musician. I'll just lean in. He always remembers. So I think we're going to start writing it on a whiteboard and putting it near the clock or something.
I was hoping there was a secret there that you could share, that, so that people could help remember their names.
No, I'm the worst. I'm sure, and I see some really crazy smart improvisers who I think nail that every time, and are keeping track of every character's name.
I really aspire to do
that.
I
wish I could do that. Yeah. I think we all need to. I think this isn't improv. We need to study to get good at that. I think there's like brain training exercises.
Yes.
Or remember people's names and connect them to a visual object, because we remember objects better than words. Yes. But I don't know.
We need to create improv memory palaces.
Yeah, memory palace that we can open up doors and walk around inside and be like, do you remember this? Close the door. Do you remember this from the first scene?
It's hard enough improvising without...
Remember your mum character from scene 1? We called her Agnes. Okay, I'm going to shut that door. Remember it's there. We disappear for 45 minutes and come back to the door and we're all just like... open the door. No, forgotten it. Agnes is in there screaming at us.
So you do the first scene. So one of the puppets initiates the scene.
Yeah.
Does the puppet have a premise in mind, or is it more organic?
Well, you've got to understand that behind the puppet is an improviser. Everyone's like, is there a theory about this thing? We're just doing an improv show with puppets. We're all still improvisers.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah.
But no, we know nothing. We know nothing going in, and for the most part, we don't even know who the protagonist is going to be. And sometimes we've started opening the show with a character doing something physical in silence. And that character often becomes the protagonist. And we started doing that kind of because we want to introduce the audience to the concept of bunraku puppetry, of tabletop puppetry. Because if they haven't seen a show like it before, or even seen a tabletop puppet, we can't start giving them stuff straight away. So we've started opening the show quite quietly with a puppet walking on stage and doing something. And I don't know what, but it might be something as physical as like moving a box from one place to another, or putting books on shelves or something. And then eventually another character will come in. And often that first character, the first puppet on, we decide is the protagonist, but not necessarily. And that's something we've only started doing recently. And I think it helps, because, like I said, we're juggling three balls. We're juggling narrative and improv and puppetry. And we've got a very unique approach to all three of those. We've got a very unique approach to at least two of them. Certainly our narrative and our puppetry we're doing in a way that is unique to us. And we've kind of got to get the audience used to the idea of what we're doing. Because it's not, short-form games that they've seen before. We want to let them slowly take it in. And I think starting the show like that, simply. And we don't know who's going to grab that puppet. We don't know who's going to end up being the protagonist. Or even if that first character on it is the protagonist. But yeah, we take that character and then we just do an opening scene. I think what you might find interesting is that what I think is that not a lot of groups are doing is we're doing protagonist-led storytelling. So we rarely have a B story. Almost never have a B story. And the protagonist is in all the scenes, right? So lots of groups are doing like an ABC structure,
What do you mean by ABC?
So a story that will do a scene with these two characters. It's it's the captain and the first mate on a pirate ship, and we'll establish that. B story, like it's two guys, in the engine room.
Do some sweeping.
Yeah. And then the C story, it's a guy on a desert island and this parrot, right? And then we'll go back to A. We'll see the captain, ABC. ABC.
Right,
so you've seen that format. It's kind of a Harold. Harold's another thing that people are doing a lot. And there's often like 2 or 3 stories going on. So Showstoppers and Music Box do 3 narratives often, or 2 narratives. We've got one protagonist, and we follow them all the way through. And there's not many groups doing that, which I found fascinating, because most stories are that, right? Certainly most movies and, fairy tales are that. We have Little Red Riding Hood, and we follow her all the way through. We don't cut to the woodsman somewhere else wandering around, wonder what's going on the other side of the woods. It's her story, and we are with her all the way through. And, the same's true of, Wall-E, right? Pixar movie Wall-E. We're with Wall-E all the way through. There's a few bits where we move around, but it's essentially his story, and we're following that character. And that's how we do it. And we give one of the important things we do is we don't do anything narrative at the beginning of our show. Right? We strip away any narrative choices for at least one scene, sometimes more. And that again is like an interesting thing that no one else is really doing, I've noticed. But we're doing that to introduce the protagonist. We're just before there's a call to adventure, before our protagonist's life changes in some way, we're just hanging out with this character and hopefully getting the audience to make an emotional connection and like this character, And like Lord of the Rings, right? We meet Frodo, and it's, I think, half an hour, maybe more, till Gandalf shows up and with a ring, and he's like, "Oh my God, can you get rid of this for me? Run across the land for 3 movies." But the half hour is just him hanging out. We see him partying, meeting this guy, and that's important. That's really important. And the same with Wall-E. We meet him, no words, no dialogue. We just see this robot packing up boxes and putting them in his chest and building these things, and we see other dead robots, and then he puts himself in his bed, containment thing, and he watches a movie, and he saves a little cockroach from the wind outside, and then he crawls in his cot and rocks himself to sleep. None of this is narrative. This is character information, and we're just spending time giving the audience an opportunity to fall in love with this character before the giant spaceship comes down, and we meet Eve, who's a more up-to-date robot. And that's a change in our protagonist's situation. But we spend 20 minutes with Wall-E before that happens. If that happened in scene 1, we would care less later on in the story when he gets in trouble. And that's why we do it. We really try and force nothing to happen, narrative. No change to the protagonist's life, at least, for the first couple of scenes. We just see them in their ordinary world.
So how many potential puppets would you take along to a glitch show?
We're rocking, I think, between 17 and 20 right now. And we discovered that quite early on, that we needed more. We always needed more.
More?
We've used 17 in a show before. We've got up to 17, which I didn't like, because that means we've run out. We can't do any more. No new characters. And you think there's not that many characters, but they're sometimes it happens. I had 6 or 7. I thought this would be enough. Puppets I'd built for other things in the past, and a couple of puppets I'd brought, but I made a rule that no puppets that are brought should be in glitch. This is a bespoke piece of theatre that should have its own things built for it, You don't see the Muppets, with something they brought at Hamley's, Stone the Crow, and I think it's I did, that's just a rule I set myself.
Yeah.
So I started making puppets, and there's a few that I rushed made that are really shitty and are still in the show. It's like this little purple one that is just like one piece of fabric just sewn in a circle, and I've like tied wire to attach feet and arms on. It's got no definitive features. It's got no neck. It's got nothing. It's just a slit for the mouth. And I was just like, we just need puppets. And I'm just like glue gunning my fingers onto it. Like, literally. And like, I remember in an early show, I was like sewing one of those up in the audience before a show because I was just like, it was like our second or third show, and we run out of puppets in the first one. And I was just like, oh my god, how are we gonna do this? I'm just like quickly making puppets. So yeah, quite quickly. And we started doing cutaway scenes, flashbacks. And the more of those you do, the more you burn through the characters. And I've got this rule that the same puppet shouldn't play more than one character in the show.
That's interesting.
And I think just visually it's kind of weird if that puppet comes back. As human improvisers, we do it all the time, I do a two-prop show with Charlie, and we're just like churning through characters, like a new one every 30 seconds. But in Glitch, I think it just the theatre aspect of it, just theatrically, I don't think you want to see this little blue teddy bear in the scene one being, a character's school friend. You don't want to see it later on in the show when we need a Russian terrorist to show up, pick up that. But like it's like, oh, hang on, wasn't he? It's kind of weird from a visual standpoint. So all the puppets can only be used as one character in the show, and that became problematic very quickly when we started doing cutaways. Like I remember an early show we did like an X Factor style cutaway, and we've got a special area on the stage where we do flashbacks, cutaways, and we had like the 3 judges, as you would see in an X Factor type show, the previous like contender, right, and then left the stage, and then our protagonist came on. And it was like a 20-second cutaway. Like the protagonist said, "Oh, I was on the X Factor once." We did a quick flashback, and we came back. But that's 4 puppets we've burned through in a 20-second scene. 2 of them didn't even say anything. They just kind of were X Factor judges, and we're like, "Oh, can't use those 4 puppets anymore." And then we just start getting bits of fabric and pretending they're floating characters and mouths in the sky, and as we get desperate. So yeah, I quite quickly realised we need 20 puppets.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you find that particular puppets play the same sort of characters? Does the appearance of their puppet inform the characters that they play?
This is a very good question. It's something I'm very concerned about. I try to make them unique but simplistic, right? They all start as a doodle. I draw a doodle, and if that doodle has too much detail on it, it doesn't work in the show. These characters can't have, eyelids and this and that and stuff that gives it too much character. They're kind of all circles with dots for eyes. Like, to some extent, there are variations on that. And, because these puppets need to be, children in one show and old people in the next, or anything we might need really, and we don't want to put too much character in them. There's a few that I think have a little too much character that might look grumpy or something. There's like one with a monobrow, but even that character I've seen, like, he can look grumpy, but I've also seen it performed in a way that you kind of, like, someone would play a very nice character with it, and you almost feel sorry for this character, because you're like, oh, he's got this horrible grumpy face, and it's probably so misunderstood. Like, yeah, so we tried to keep it not too specific in the design.
But so when you're choosing a puppet to bring to the stage, how much conscious thought are you thinking, right, okay, so I want this kind of character, so I'm going for this sort of puppet, or are you just...
Yeah. Most of the time, we don't have time to think.
Really?
It's just, we just bend down, grab a puppet, and it comes on stage.
Yeah.
There is, like, you'd have to ask the other members of the group, because we've never had a conversation about this. We certainly all have our favourites, And if I know that, so I also try and balance the show out. So if we've had a scene that was, the last scene was too talky or information driven, which happens, I'll actively try and make the next scene simplistic or silly or physical. Certainly if that's happened, like I might find myself reaching down, grabbing the nearest puppet, and then just see like another one just a bit further on, and I'm like, oh, I'll go for that. But you haven't got time to think. No. But, we certainly have our favourites. There's this orange puppet that has eyes really too far apart from his head and a little mouth in the middle of his face. Like, not a big, like, flapping mouth Muppets have. Like, a little kind of... Yeah. Like Bunsen Honeydew in the Muppets. Like, a little tiny, tiny mouth. And I love that character. And you can bring him on and just have him, like, look at the audience and it gets a laugh. And... yeah, there's something weird and interesting about that character, about that puppet. And again, I've played it in multiple different shows, completely differently, like with very different voices, very different characteristics, and everyone else has played that character. So we actively try not to have characters connect to the puppets, or give them names. Like everyone's like, oh, what's this one's name? I'm like, oh, that's the blue one. Yeah. Because we don't want to have a connection to these puppets, because they have to be blank canvases every show, just as we do. Yes. Jim Henson said it's very important to have a healthy disrespect for your puppets, which I think is great. Yeah. And he just, chucks Kermit across a room. Like, I'm done with him. And we kind of feel the same. It's like, this show's not about the puppets, it's about characters that we create using them.
So, when you're telling a narrative story with Glitch, how do you structure it so that you get enough of your... the elements you want to bring in without going off so far that it's hard to get to the climax?
Yeah. We actively allow ourselves to fall off and allow things to fall off. But we do... My whole thing is like, in the rehearsal room, we'll talk lots. On the day, allow it all to fall apart and hopefully some of it happens. But you're looking under the hood now. You're really wanting me to lift up the hood and show you the engine. We've got a... narratively, we've kind of found this, and I didn't come up with this, but there's a kind of 5-point. There's like so many different types of narrative you can do. There's like a 5-point narrative that we do. There's a free line narrative that I love that was written by Tom Lennon and his writing partner Robert Ben-Garant in their book Writing Movies for Fun and Profit. In their book, they say that all stories are these free lines. Get a likable guy, stuck up a tree, throw rocks at him, and then get him down from the tree. Right. That's it. Yeah. Likable guy, stuck up a tree, throw rocks at him, get him down from the tree. So, likable guy, or just a protagonist, a character that we connect with, right? Stuck up a tree, so give them a new situation. Change their situation. Yeah. Throw rocks, like, give them obstacles and new things to deal with while in this new situation. And then get them down. This is the important thing. Get them down from the tree. Like, have them return, hopefully having changed or learned something from their journey. So, Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, the tree is the tornado that takes her to a parallel universe. The rocks are, a crazy witch and flying monkeys and everything. And then she returns, and that's true of, Die Hard and The Matrix and Star Wars and, every Russian folklore and every European fairy tale. Like, they're all likable guys stuck up a tree, throw rocks and get them down from the tree. So that I love, and I always bring that up first whenever I'm talking to people about narrative. It's just like, if you can get that done, then you're fine, right? But so many times I'm like, oh, they didn't do a tree. Or they forgot to throw rocks. Or they just left them up there, you know? And it's such a simple little analogy, but it's so true. And you can literally go like, all right, in that story, what was the tree? What were the rocks? Were there enough rocks? Yeah. Was it interesting? So, but we've kind of expanded that, and I didn't come up with these 5 things. It's on the internet somewhere. It's balance, unbalance, quest, climax, new balance.
Oh, right, okay.
So balance, establish a protagonist in their ordinary situation, their everyday life. It's their balanced world. Unbalance, we tilt it. We unbalance their situation. We change. Sometimes abruptly, sometimes slowly. We might point towards a change and get there eventually. This doesn't have to be quick. We just change their everyday situation. So every story is a change in the character situation. Every good story. Otherwise... we're just watching, Dorothy walking around the farm, milking cows.
Nice for a bit, but, it's not a whole
It's
story.
going to be like her just, walking the dog. And as adorable as she is, I want a tornado to come and take her and get rid of her. Balance, so that's balance. Unbalanced, so we change the situation in some way. Quest is like the reaction to whatever the unbalance was. And this is the main bulk of your show. This is like half your show, maybe more. There should be ups, there should be downs.
Upbeats, downbeats.
Downs, up. It's a winding road. It's the road of trials, Campbell would call it. Good things, bad things, allies turn up, mentors, this, that. There's lots of things that we like to do. There's things we've kind of... It's more than that. It's more than just this happens and that happens. We'll get into it if you're interested. And leading up to balance, unbalanced, quest, climax, the big finale, the resolution, whatever the problem was is now solved. You know, the slaves are free, the witch is dead, the whatever the problem is has been resolved. And then my favourite one that everyone forgets is New Balance. So after the big climax, there's another scene.
Yeah.
One more quick little pickup. A great writer, Dan Harmon, refers to this scene as having changed. Your character returns having changed, and I like that. I think there should be a quick little, to use Wizard of Oz again, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there.
Yeah.
That would be, you kind of need that. You need to cross the return threshold and go home and see the character, see Woody and Buzz sitting on the bed at the end going, oh, we're all right now, you and me.
Yeah.
Good for you. You're my mate. Like you need that scene. Everyone forgets that scene's in the movie, but it's there and it's important for an audience to be like, I feel good now. Everything's good, and our character learned. That doesn't always happen. We've certainly done a lot of glitch shows where the character learned nothing, or we've not crossed the return threshold, or we've killed the protagonist.
Really?
Like we've done that a bunch of times. Yeah.
Wow.
Like we try not to. We've got that kind of in our souls, and we talk about it in rehearsal, but we allow ourselves to get loose with that idea and go off on tangents, and be a little, Charlie Kaufman with our stories.
Cool. So, obviously puppets is a big thing that you do in improv, but it's not the only thing, is it?
No.
You're involved in other improv as
I
well. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're interviewing all these amazing people. The London improv community right now is amazing. There's so many interesting things going on, and I've been lucky enough to see it grow. Like I was, involved in improv. I'm not one of these people who found improv in my 30s. I'm like, oh no, I was a teenager. I certainly lost it for a huge chunk of my 20s. But it came, but I found it as a teenager, so I was aware of it. So when I came back to London after living abroad for a bit, I saw that on your list. You're ready to talk to me about living abroad.
Do you want to talk about that?
No, we'll get there. But yeah, sorry.
Did you?
I came back to London after being away, and tried to see what was going on in the improv world, basically, because I missed it, and I wanted it back. And I found Remy doing imprology, and I found Alan Marriott doing Crunchy Frog, and I did both those schools of thought that are very different. I felt very lucky to have these two very different teachers at that time, having already done Lee Simpson and Phelan McDermott and those guys. To have that so far in the past and then come to this two new schools of thought. And Remy never talks about game of the scene or yes-anding. It's all very philosophical and spontaneous. Have you met Remy?
Yes.
He's amazing.
He is amazing.
A very interesting character. I'd say that. Remy, if you're listening, I love you. He's amazing. But it was really funny. Everyone other than Remy is teaching some very similar schools of thought and philosophies and ideas, and he's not doing any of that. Or he is, but he's given him his own words. But I loved that. And I was doing I met Roderick Miller
Yeah.
doing that as well, and we were doing some really, really interesting scenes, some really interesting ideas and concepts. I loved that, and it was so cool to have had that experience. And then with Crunchy Frog, it was a lot more what you would expect from contemporary improv. It was, initiation, yes ands, game of the scene, flagging the game, escalating, relationship. Like, it was all the stuff that we know and love, like, with that. So I got these two great kind of forces. And then there was one show I did with Remy's group where Jules Munns was running the first Slapdash Festival, the very first one. And we're in the Old Vic tunnels, right? So underground. And he had just invited, I want to say 10 different improv groups to bring, not all their people, but a few people.
Yeah.
And to put on a big show together. And we did kind of short form games. And I came there with Remy and a couple of other people from that group. And that was the night I met everyone. Just everyone. Everyone we know in the improv community who are teaching now. I met Katie Shute and Heather, and I didn't meet Steve that night, but I met everyone that night, and eventually met Steve and found, he needed help, basically. Right? No, it was perfect. Hoopla was just getting bigger, and I turned up being like, I can help. And it was at a perfect time, and John Monkhouse was around as well, and he had already helped Steve loads, Steve had gone from one night to 2 nights at the Miller, and John was helping run the second night, and it was all just getting building up, and kind of over 6 months, I guess, me and Steve got to know each other, and eventually I was helping host things, and then for a year, it was just me. It was a lot of me doing the live shows, and Steve was teaching, but not necessarily doing the live stuff, the Friday, Saturday shows. So I've been hosting and looking after launch pads as well. I've done loads of those, and hosting the Friday, Saturday shows, and coaching groups as well, which is fun.
Yeah, tell me about the coaching.
Coaching's good. Coaching's fascinating because you're not teaching improv. You're giving this specific group of people what they specifically need.
Ooh.
Right?
That's really interesting.
So everyone thinks, oh, you're a coach, you're coaching them, and it's just like being a teacher. I'm like, no. Different groups need something different. Right? So I heard you interviewing Angela from the Pina Colidas. We did Danny and Sandy. She briefly talked about that. Oh, and you did Heather as well.
Yes,
yes.
Of
course. So I coached them for a little bit. And that came from Alana kind of wanted to form a group, and she's very organised and said we should have a coach, and she'd see me do a bunch of shows, and she saw me in Mike and Charlie, and we just kind of formed that way. And they just needed to learn short form games. I didn't really teach them any improv. They had come off loads of courses, and I think what they needed was just to learn games. I helped them, from a theatre standpoint, put their show on. Simple things like hosting the game, bringing the chairs on you need to, and then what's a good way of playing this particular game. So it's helping them build their show more than teaching them improv. Whereas that's just an example of one group I've helped, but that was unique to them. That's all they needed. They didn't need me to really coach them on improv. They're doing their own thing, and they're 5 very different personalities that work very well on stage. And I almost didn't want to crowd their brains with too much stuff, because what I loved about them was these 5 great personalities who were clashing on stage in interesting ways and having fun. Having fun. So that's what they need, and whereas other groups need other things. I'm coaching the Parentheticals right now, or their sneaky little side group, Improdicy, on narrative, and they're doing a narrator-driven narrative. So there's a narrator of a book kind of telling their story and making up, and that's protagonist-led as well, and that's going really well, I think. You saw one the other night.
Yeah, it's going really well. It's going really well.
Yeah, I think they're doing good. I've coached some other groups here and there, but I like helping people out, and because I came from theatre, right? I'm not an improviser who found it late. I think that's useful to some groups. I'm not just looking at the improv. I'm trying to put on a show, and I think that's important.
No, I love that idea of it.
I think sometimes improv can get a little talky. I think we've all seen that scene with 2 people standing opposite each other, just trying to let the audience know how intelligent they are.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of bored of that.
Yeah.
There's some groups who do it really well, and there's some improvisers who do it really well, and I'll gladly sit through those shows.
But it's not the only approach.
It's not the only approach, and also there's a lot of people who see that and think that that's it.
Yes.
I was in a group where we just did silent scenes. I was in a group called Stum, me and Lucy Fennell and Steve Rowe. We just did silent scenes, like whole launchpad sets, like 15, 20 minutes, just like no words. And we discovered that this is great because we're still doing everything you would do in improv. We're still making an initiation, recognizing that initiation, paying attention to it, yes, and in that suggestion. We're just not doing it with words, you know?
Yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And it makes audiences lean in. Like everyone's like, as soon as we stop talking, they're like, oh, they're not talking. And like 30 seconds in, they're like, oh, they're going to do the whole show like this. We'd never say a silent improv. We just did the thing. And we're wearing animal onesies.
I was with you until that point.
But yeah, I try and bring theatre into it as well, and that's certainly true in Glitch. And then I don't really like the talky, thinky, brainy two-prov. I do when it's done well, but even that in moderation. I'm also in Mike and Charlie. With
tell me
Charlie.
about that.
So that happened accidentally. Sometimes in Glitch we do a launchpad for fun. We used to do it like years ago. We would just book ourselves on a launchpad and just do like a montage or something, just to like not have to do narrative or puppets for once. Like we like playing with each other, but we don't like. It's so nice and so freeing just to do a montage.
Really? So you would no puppets at all? It would just
no, it's just us.
Brilliant.
We just do a montage. We just do scenes or something. I mean, you got to realize in Glitch we're doing improv, not even looking at each other.
Yeah.
So to actually look at each other and do a scene it's a delight. So we used to do those as a group, and I booked us on a launchpad, and it came out that there was only going to be 4 of us who were available, and Charlie had just joined, right, just like 2 weeks earlier, and had done 1 rehearsal with us. That day, the other 2 dropped out. That day, one had a medical thing, the other had some other job thing, and Charlie turned up, who I just met like 2 weeks earlier, 3 weeks earlier. And I said, so the other 2 aren't coming, it's just me and you. And Georgina Rowe was hosting. And she, anyway. Charlie was just like, okay, yeah, no problem. Fine.
Brilliant.
What are we going to do? I was like, have you ever done two-prov before? And she went, no. I'm like, fine. I started teaching a format of two-prov that me and another person used to do, Constantine used to do. And she went, can we do something more simple? And she was completely right. She just stripped it away. Like me and Constantine had a laptop with sound effects on, and we were just like being like too fancy. And she just kind of stripped it away, and we did that. And we did a launchpad, and like I said, George was hosting, and we hadn't even given the show a name. And George had just went, Mike and Charlie. And that's the birth of that. And in the audience that night was Ed from Giggle Loop and Shem from C Free Something. And Shem came up to us and said, oh, we're doing a Bring Your Own Team Jam on Sunday, like in a few days' time. Do you want to come? And then Ed, who I've coached as well in Giggle Loop, was like, oh, do you guys want to do the Giggle Loop show next week? And me and Charlie were like, well, I guess Mike and Charlie is a thing.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, we're doing a show now. But our philosophy there was, we definitely nailed it at that Bring Your Own Team Jam, because we were on 15th of 17 groups. And there
I love him.
And everyone had had like 7 minutes to do something. And there was a lot of two-prov, and we were at the nursery, and there was a couple of groups in a row who were doing the talky-thinky thing, which, again, done well is great. So sometimes it's not, by people trying to emulate the good ones at it. And it's an easy thing to fall into, because you kind of think it's all words. And Charlie just kind of leaned in like next to me and said, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, and we didn't have a conversation on that, but I got what she meant.
Yeah.
And we did the dumbest, most physical, silly scene with it, like you've ever, like just 7 minutes of us just being really physical and fun and dumb. And I've studied clowning, and I'm physical, and Charlie's a dancer, and we just got this show. It was just so much fun. It was just 7 minutes, and we were like, oh, I know what this is now. We kind of did it at the launch pad, but we were like, oh, I know it is now. And then we were able to back that up really quickly the next week at the Giggle Loop show. And we're like, cool, we know what this is. It's kinetic and physical and fun and broad. The characters are broad. You know, we're not going to do talky, thinky. We will, as we did in a recent show, play two snails and then spend a minute on stage climbing out of our shells, swapping shells and getting back in. You know.
Brilliant.
There is one. We did a scene at the old Duck Duck Goose in Stockwell, which is one floor up, and the stage is by a window. And we did this transition where we just copy each other, and we started in the middle of the stage and ended up on opposite sides with our arms like resting on the wall. My arm's on the wall, but Charlie's arm is on a curtain. And Vic from the front row went, Charlie, the window's open. Right? She was like trying to quietly tell Charlie not to put her arm there because the window's like open because it's really hot in there. Yeah. And I took that as a suggestion. So I came on and went, Charlie, the window's open. And I opened the curtain and climbed out the window. And Charlie's like, what, the window's open? Climbed out with me. We then shut the window behind us. Only like a third of the audience can see us at this point. And we're doing a scene on the wrong side of the window on this like 1 foot balcony. Meanwhile, Vic's probably about to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
And like only like a tiny percent of the audience can actually see us through the window. There's the front row on the opposite side. We're doing this scene on the other side of the window, talking, like whispering to each other. A bus pulls up, and we're one floor up, of course. Bus pulls up. There's two people in the front of the bus, and we just like casually wave at these two people. These two people had the most confused look on their face and kind of wave back. And then they look at each other and the bus drives off. And the few audience members who witnessed that were like laughing. We opened up the window, climbed back in, sat on stage and started a scene as those two people on the bus. But 1 minute before that happened. And the scene ended with them getting off the bus and coming up into the theatre to work out what the hell was going on. Like,
beautiful. But
that's very, like, I think that's a very Mike and Charlie moment of us, like, no, we're going to go out the window. We broke a stage once, and running on stage to do the show, we stepped on the stage and it broke beneath our feet. And before we'd even got a suggestion, we just launched into a scene of, like, a grandfather teaching his son about carpentry using wood. Like, you know, it gets silly very quickly. We're not trying to... It's not a smart show. I think it's quite smart. It's just fun and physical and kinetic. Yeah, and she's great. You should have Charlie on the podcast.
She'd be very welcome.
Yes. She's got a few things to say.
Brilliant. Well, we should more or less wrap things up.
Wow. Has it been an hour?
It's been an hour.
Wow.
Do you want to give a special message?
Oh, yeah. So we're going to the Edinburgh Festival this year for the first time ever.
Brilliant.
With Glitch. We've somehow never gone yet. And right now, we're in the middle of... we're like... When's this coming out? Like this week, right?
This will be tomorrow.
Oh, amazing. So we're in the middle of an Indiegogo campaign, right, to raise a bit of funds to help us put our show on and get us up there and get the cello up there and put roofs over our head and everything. We looked in these Indiegogo campaigns and Kickstarters and saw, you know, for people's support they get like rewards or perks as they call them. And I was like, if we're going to do this, I want the coolest things we could possibly give. And I think the coolest thing Glitch have to give is puppets, right? So we're making puppets. We're making puppets and giving them away. There's lots of other perks. We're going to do like a spoken word poem based on your name, and there's like lots of silly other levels of perks of rewards. But certainly the sexy one is you get your own handmade, one of a kind, no two are the same. Puppet that we've made that is yours and is unique. So have a look on the Indiegogo page. Just type in Glitch when you search Indiegogo, or there's a link to it on our Twitter and Facebook. But if you want a puppet and help us get to Edinburgh,
this is your chance.
This is your chance. And we're not going to be selling them in any other way. Because, you know, to get one of us who make puppets professionally to make a one-of-a-kind puppet, like, it should be a 4-figure number. So for us to do it for a 2-figure number, it's ridiculous. But, we're on our way to Edinburgh.
Brilliant. Well, I shall look forward to hearing about how that goes when you've done it.
When we've returned. When we come back either crying from no audience showing up, or ecstatic.
But maybe when you're in Edinburgh, you'll encounter allies and maybe some enemies.
We can definitely go across a threshold and have some low points, and you know.
But when you come back,
one of us might die.
I hope that doesn't happen.
I kind of hope it does, because that will make the story more compelling. I'm going to kill someone. Who should I kill? I'm the protagonist of my own story, so it's going to be one of the... I'm going to kill Lewis. That'll be fun. Let's kill Lewis. It'll just make the story so much better. Wouldn't it be terrible if he died?
Yes, it would be terrible if he died.
This is on the internet. Why are you yes-anding this? You're making me sound like a psychopath. I'll kill some of the puppets. How about that? Is that better? They're just foam and fur and sponge. Have I crossed the line here? Are you trying to wrap this up?
Yeah. I think that's right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
I made this.
That's improv!